The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 5 miles of polished crystal floor. Above, a dome showed the real-time view of space around the station. Usually it displayed peaceful stars and trading ships moving between worlds. Today, it showed something else entirely. Dark shapes moved through the void like oil spilling across water. They consumed everything in their path. Where moments before there had been merchant vessels and small colonies, now there was nothing but empty space and the growing mass of the void swarm. Ambassador HFY stood at the center of the hall. His forearms shook as he held the data pad containing the latest reports. The Krillian warrior had fought in dozens of battles across his long life. He had seen entire worlds burn and fleets destroyed, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying across the vast space without amplification. The Krillian vocal cords were designed for battlefield commands. "I bring news from the Outer Rim sectors." The hall fell silent. 847 different species turned their attention to the warrior. Some had eyes like humans. Others sensed through electromagnetic fields or chemical traces in the air. A few existed partially in other dimensions. But all of them understood fear. 17 sectors have fallen in the past 30 standard days. HFY continued. The colonies of New Altair, the mining worlds of the Beta Centauri system, and the agricultural planets of the Kepler region. All gone. All consumed. A sound rose from the assembled delegates. It was not quite a gasp, not quite a wail. It was the sound that beings from hundreds of worlds made when faced with their own extinction. High above them all, Chancellor Velmora began to glow. The ancient crystalline being had led the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years. She had seen wars and plagues and natural disasters. She had guided the galaxy through its darkest times. But as her inner light pulsed with distress, everyone could see that even she was afraid. "What of our combined fleets?" asked Admiral Thekmore of the aquatic Nereid species. His translation device made his underwater speech sound like bubbles popping. "Surely our united forces can halt this advance." HFY's forearms dropped to his sides. "Our combined fleets now number less than 30% of their original strength. The Void Swarm learns from every engagement. Every weapon we use against them they adapt to defend against. Every tactic we employ they counter within hours." The hall erupted into chaos. Delegates began speaking all at once in hundreds of different languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up. Words of panic and despair filled the air in every known form of communication. Dr. Kilves of the Altarian Republic rose from her seat. Her pale blue skin had turned almost white with stress. As the galaxy's leading expert on alien biology, her words carried weight. "The Void Swarm represents an evolutionary impossibility," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "They consume organic matter and convert it directly into more of themselves. They share knowledge instantly across their entire species. They have no individual consciousness, only the collective will of the swarm. Fighting them is like fighting a force of nature. Then what do we do?" The question came from Representative Gorhan of the peaceful Epsilon Eridani colonies. His people had not fought a war in over 1,000 years. "How do we stop something that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, and learns from every defeat?" Chancellor Velmora's light dimmed as she considered the question. Around the hall, delegates waited for her wisdom. She had always found solutions before. Surely she would find one now. "There is," she said slowly. "One option we have not yet considered." The hall fell silent again. Even the background hum of the life support system seemed to quiet. "We must ask for help from those we have been hesitant to fully trust." Every being in the hall knew who she meant. In the far corner of the chamber, almost forgotten in their simple chairs, sat 3 figures that looked almost comically small compared to the grand architecture around them. The human delegation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez looked up from the paper notebook she had been writing in. The sight of a human using actual paper still amazed many of the aliens. Most species had moved beyond physical writing materials thousands of years ago, but humans seemed to prefer these primitive tools for reasons no one quite understood. Beside her sat Commander Sarah Chen, officially listed as a diplomatic aide. She wore a simple gray uniform with no visible weapons or armor. To most aliens, she looked harmless. A few of the more observant delegates noticed that she never stopped watching the exits and that her muscles moved like coiled springs. The third human was General Marcus Webb. His official title was Logistics Coordinator, which seemed appropriate for someone managing the complex supply chains needed to keep Earth's small contributions to galactic society running smoothly. He was an older man with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He looked like someone's grandfather. "The humans," whispered Counselor Yethak of the Insectoid Kepler Collective. His compound eyes reflected the light in strange patterns as he stared at the small delegation. "The Deathworlders." The whisper spread through the chamber like ripples in a pond. Deathworlders. The ones from Earth? The impossible planet. Ambassador Vasquez seemed unaware of the attention she was drawing. She continued writing in her notebook with a simple pen. Commander Chen's expression remained neutral. General Webb smiled pleasantly at nothing in particular. For 50 years, these humans had been members of the Galactic Council. For 50 years, they had been polite, helpful, and surprisingly peaceful for beings that came from the most dangerous world anyone had ever discovered. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. Its gravity would crush most species. Its weather included storms that could level cities and temperature variations that would kill most life forms within minutes. Its oceans were filled with predators that could bite through starship hulls. Its land teemed with creatures that had evolved to kill and eat each other with terrifying efficiency. And somehow humans had not only survived on this nightmare planet, but had thrived. They had become its dominant species through a combination of intelligence, adaptability, and a refusal to give up that bordered on insanity. When they first made contact with galactic civilization, many species had expected them to be conquerors. Beings that came from such a harsh world would surely be violent and aggressive. Instead, the humans had been diplomats and scientists. They shared their technology freely. They helped mediate disputes between other species. They sent teachers and doctors and engineers to help build a better galaxy. After 50 years, many had decided that the initial fears were unfounded. Humans might come from a death world, but they were civilized beings who preferred peace to War Chancellor Velamora's light pulsed as she made her decision. "Ambassador Vasquez," she said, her crystalline voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "The Galactic Council formally requests the assistance of Earth in our current crisis." Elena Vasquez looked up from her notebook. For a moment, her dark eyes met the Chancellor's glowing form across the vast distance of the hall. Then she set her pen down carefully and stood. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the whisper of air recycling systems seemed to stop. "What kind of assistance are you requesting, Chancellor?" Vasquez asked. Her voice was calm and professional. "We need your strategic minds," Velmora replied. "Human intelligence is unique in the galaxy. Perhaps your species can see solutions that have escaped the rest of us." Ambassador Vasquez nodded slowly. She looked around the great hall, taking in the desperate faces of hundreds of species facing extinction. "I see," she said quietly. "You want our advice?" "Yes," Chancellor Velmora said. "Your council could save us all." Elena Vasquez smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible from across the hall. But somehow it changed everything. Dr. Kilves remembered the day she first saw the human homeworld data. She had been the galaxy's top xenobiologist for over 2 centuries. She had studied life from gas giants where creatures swam through clouds of methane to ice worlds where beings existed as living crystal. She thought she had seen everything the universe could produce. Then Earth's survey data arrived at her laboratory on Altair Prime. The gravity readings alone should have been impossible. 1.0 Earth gravities was nearly double what most spacefaring species considered livable. The Altarians, with their delicate bone structure, would be crushed within hours. The graceful Nereid people, evolved in underwater cities, would be pressed flat against the ground. But gravity was just the beginning. Earth's atmosphere contained 21% oxygen. Most species required careful environmental suits to avoid being poisoned by such a corrosive gas mixture. Oxygen was what they used to clean metal surfaces and sterilize medical equipment. No known life form could breathe it directly and survive. 2. Temperature variations were equally deadly. Earth's weather systems produced storms with winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Its oceans generated waves over 30 meters high. Its tectonic activity created earthquakes that could level cities and volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for months. And the life forms. Dr. Kilvest still felt her skin pale when she remembered reading about Earth's ecosystem. Creatures that hunted in coordinated packs using primitive tools and complex strategies. Predators that could remain motionless for hours before striking with lightning speed. Plants that produced toxins capable of killing beings 10 times their size. Microscopic organisms that ate through metal and stone. Most terrifying of all were the humans themselves. They stood upright on 2 legs, which should have made them slow and clumsy. Instead, they could run for hours without stopping. They could throw objects with deadly accuracy. They could climb vertical surfaces and swim in water that would drown most species. Their bodies were designed for survival in ways that seemed impossible. They had backup organs for critical functions. Their blood could clot to seal wounds within minutes. They could heal from injuries that would permanently disable other species. They produced adrenaline, a chemical that allowed them to perform superhuman feats in moments of danger. Most shocking of all, they lived in partnership with trillions of microorganisms inside their own bodies. Other species would die from such an infection. Humans required it to survive. Dr. Kilvest had published her findings in a paper titled Terran Biological Impossibilities. It had been required reading in xenobiology courses across the galaxy for decades. But that was 50 years ago. Since then, humans had been surprisingly normal members of galactic society. They served as mediators in trade disputes. They worked as engineers on space stations and research scientists in laboratories. They opened restaurants that served food so mild that even the most sensitive species could enjoy them. They wrote poetry and grew gardens and played music that soothed beings from 100 different worlds. Earth's military contributions to galactic defense were minimal. A few small ships for patrol duty, some peacekeeping forces for minor conflicts. Nothing that suggested the terrifying potential that their homeworld implied. Many species had begun to wonder if the original assessments were wrong. Commander. Sarah Chen sat in the diplomatic waiting area outside the main council chamber. She wore her standard gray uniform with no visible rank insignia or weapons. To most observers, she looked like any other government employee. 2 Altarian diplomats sat nearby, speaking in their liquid musical language. They assumed their translation devices were set to privacy mode. They were wrong. I still cannot understand the fear our ancestors felt about these humans, said the first Altarian. His name was Felsan, and he was considered an expert on human-alien relations. They seem so harmless, agreed his companion, Yelmar. Small, soft creatures who prefer to write with primitive tools and eat plants. Where is the terrifying death world? Species we were warned about? Commander Chen continued reading her electronic pad. She showed no sign that she understood their conversation. Perhaps, Felsan continued, our translation of the original reports was incorrect. Earth may be a dangerous world, but its dominant species clearly adapted by becoming more peaceful, not more violent. It would make sense, Yelmar said. On a world where everything is trying to kill you, the survivors would be those who learned to hide and avoid conflict, not those who fought back. Sarah Chen looked up from her pad for just a moment. Her brown eyes met those of the Altarian diplomats. She smiled politely and nodded in greeting. Both Altarians felt a sudden chill run through their nervous systems. There was something in that smile that reminded them of predators from their homeworld's ancient history. Something that suggested teeth and hunting and things that moved silently through the night. But when they looked again, Commander Chen had returned to reading her pad. She looked perfectly harmless. In his office high above the council chamber, Chancellor Velmora reviewed humanity's files. The crystalline being's internal light dimmed as she read through 50 years of peaceful cooperation. Humans had helped establish the universal translation protocol that allowed all species to communicate. They had shared medical techniques that had saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. They had designed more efficient transportation systems and cleaner energy sources. In all that time, they had never started a war, never seized territory that didn't belong to them, never used their strength to bully weaker species. It was, Velmora reflected, almost suspicious how peaceful they had been. She pulled up the original first contact reports. The initial survey teams had been terrified of these deathworld creatures. Military analysts had predicted that humans would be the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Instead, they had sent diplomats and scientists. The first human ambassador had been an elderly woman named Dr. Margaret Chen. She had spoken 17 alien languages fluently and had spent her first year on the council station teaching other species about human culture through cooking and music. Her successor, Ambassador Vasquez, had been equally peaceful. She preferred quiet negotiation to public speeches. She took notes by hand in a paper notebook. She grew flowers in her office and shared earth tea with anyone who visited. These were not the actions of a conquering species from a death world, but as Velmora's light pulsed with uncertainty, she remembered something Dr. Kilves had said in her famous paper about human biology. The most dangerous predators are often those who appear least threatening until the moment they strike. General Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. His gray hair was neatly combed and his uniform was perfectly pressed. He looked like a bureaucrat or a teacher. A young Kepler collective warrior named Zikatal approached him. The insectoid being was part of his species' honor guard, trained from birth for combat. He was curious about this human who claimed to be a logistics coordinator. General Webb, Zikatal said, his mandibles clicking with polite interest. I have studied human military history as part of my cultural education courses. Your species has fought many wars. That's true, Webb replied pleasantly. Humans have fought quite a few conflicts over the years. But you have been so peaceful since joining our society, Zikatal continued. Have humans simply outgrown their violent nature? General Webb was quiet for a long moment. He watched the stars slowly wheel past the observation window. Somewhere out there, the void swarm was consuming everything in its path. Tell me, Warrior Zikatal, he finally said. When you were learning to fight, did your instructors teach you about when not to fight? Of course, the insectoid replied. A wise warrior chooses his battles carefully, and what makes a battle worth fighting? Zikatal considered the question. When you have something worth protecting, when peaceful solutions have failed, when the cost of not fighting is greater than the cost of war. General Webb nodded slowly. Humans learned those lessons too. We learned them very well. He turned away from the window and smiled at the young warrior. It was a grandfather's smile, warm and kind. The thing about humans, Warrior Zikatal, is that we're very good at waiting for the right moment. The council chamber felt different when the emergency session resumed. The casual conversations that usually filled the air were gone. Delegates sat in tense silence, their attention focused entirely on Chancellor Velmora's glowing form at the center of the hall. Honored members, the Chancellor began, her crystalline voice carrying across the vast space. We face the darkest hour in galactic history. The void swarm continues to advance, consuming entire systems. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. Our greatest minds cannot find a solution. She paused, her inner light pulsing with the weight of her words. Therefore, I formally request the wisdom and strategic counsel of our human colleagues. All eyes turned to the small section where the 3 humans sat. Ambassador Elena Vasquez closed her paper notebook and set it carefully on the table beside her. Commander Sarah Chen and General Marcus Webb remained perfectly still, their expressions unreadable. Elena stood slowly and walked to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She was a small woman, by human standards barely reaching the shoulders of most alien delegates. But something in the way she moved made the vast chamber feel smaller around her. Chancellor Velmora, she said, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. "Before we discuss strategy, I need to clarify something important." The Chancellor's light brightened with hope. "Of course, Ambassador. What clarification do you require?" Elena looked around the chamber, her dark eyes taking in the hundreds of desperate faces watching her. "You've asked for our strategic council to help you fight the Void Swarm, but you seem to believe that humanity has remained neutral in this conflict." A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembled delegates. Ambassador Zektai of the Krillian Empire leaned forward in his seat. "Have you not remained neutral, human? Your species has contributed minimal forces to our defense efforts." Elena's expression shifted slightly. It was a tiny change, so small that most aliens missed it entirely. But those few who had studied human facial expressions felt their blood chill. It was the look of a predator that had been hiding in tall grass, suddenly revealing itself. "We haven't remained neutral, Ambassador Zektai," she said quietly. "We've been waiting." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed to fade away. Chancellor Velmora's light dimmed with confusion. "Waiting? For what purpose, Ambassador Vasquez?" Elena drew herself to her full height. It wasn't impressive by human standards, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire chamber with her presence. "We've been waiting to see if you could handle this threat without us," she said. "For 50 years, humanity has watched the galaxy grow and prosper. We've seen your people build wonderful civilizations. We've learned from your cultures and shared what we could of our own." She paused, her gaze moving from species to species around the Great Hall. "We hoped that would be enough. We hoped that the galaxy we'd come to love would be strong enough to protect itself when the time came." Dr. Kilves found her voice first. "And now?" the Altarian scientist asked. Elena's smile was sad and terrible at the same time. "Now we know that hope was misplaced." General Marcus Webb rose from his seat and joined Elena on the platform. The elderly man's grandfatherly appearance hadn't changed, but somehow he seemed different now. More solid, more dangerous. "The Void. Swarm has consumed 17 sectors," he said conversationally. "They've destroyed your fleets and scattered your defenses. They've proven that conventional tactics cannot stop them." Commander Sarah Chen stood as well, completing the trio. Her gray uniform still looked perfectly ordinary, but the way she moved suggested coiled springs and lightning-fast reflexes. "Earth's High Command has been monitoring the situation," she said. "We've analyzed every battle, every tactic, every failure. Our conclusion is unanimous." Elena nodded gravely. "The galaxy cannot defend itself against this threat." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates began shouting questions and protests in hundreds of different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the flood of desperate voices. "What does this mean?" demanded Admiral Thekmor of the Nereid fleet. "What forces could your small world possibly contribute that would matter against the swarm?" "How many ships does Earth have?" called out Counselor Yithak of the Kepler Collective. "How many soldiers?" "What weapons do you possess that we do not?" added Representative Gorhan of the Peaceful Colonies. Chancellor Velmora raised her form, high above the chaos, her light blazing with authority. "Silence. Let the humans speak." The chamber fell quiet again, but the tension was almost visible in the air. Elena looked around the hall one more time. When she spoke again, her voice carried a finality that made every being present understand that everything was about to change. "Earth's High Command has reviewed the tactical situation and reached a unanimous decision," she said. "Effective. Immediately, humanity is entering this war." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the quiet of confusion or surprise. It was the stillness that comes when predators reveal themselves and prey animals realize they've been sharing the forest with something far more dangerous than they had imagined. General Webb activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The image showed Earth, but not the peaceful blue world that most aliens knew from tourism broadcasts. This was the real Earth, the death world that had forged humanity. Massive storms swirled across the surface, hurricanes that could destroy cities. Lightning lit the clouds from within, electrical discharges that would cripple starships. Volcanoes erupted along the continental edges, spewing ash and lava with the force of nuclear weapons. "This is our home," Webb said quietly. "Most species look at Earth and see a nightmare. Humans look at it and see Tuesday." The display shifted to show Earth's oceans. Creatures moved in the depths that defied comprehension. Predators with teeth like starship hulls, hunters that could crush submarines with their bare tentacles, schools of smaller fish that moved like living storms, devouring everything in their path. "For most species," Commander Chen said, "war is an aberration, something unnatural that requires training and conditioning. For humans, conflict is part of our daily existence." The hologram changed again, showing Earth's land masses. Predators stalked through jungles where every plant was poisonous and every shadow held death. Pack hunters coordinated attacks with intelligence that rivaled spacefaring civilizations. Solitary killers waited motionless for days before striking with perfect timing. "Every human alive," Elena continued, "is the descendant of survivors. We are the end result of 4 billion years of evolution on a world where everything tries to kill everything else." Ambassador Zekthai, veteran of countless battles, found himself unconsciously moving back from the platform. "What are you saying?" he whispered. Elena's smile returned, but now everyone in the chamber could see it for what it truly was. It wasn't the expression of a diplomat or a peacekeeper. It was the smile of an apex predator that had finally been given permission to hunt. "We're saying that the Void Swarm has made a mistake," she said softly. "They've threatened our garden. They've endangered our friends. They've made the galaxy we care about into a battlefield." General Webb's grandfatherly expression hardened into something that made hardened warriors take a step back. They're about to learn why nothing else on Earth survived first contact with humanity. Commander Chen's pleasant diplomatic mask fell away entirely, revealing the cold calculation of a professional soldier. "The Void Swarm adapts to conventional warfare," she said, "but they've never faced an enemy that wrote the book on unconventional tactics." Elena looked around the chamber one final time. Every delegate, every ambassador, every representative of the galaxy's greatest civilizations stared back at her with a mixture of hope and terror. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," she said formally, "Earth's war fleet is already en route to the front lines. Our ground forces are preparing for deployment. Our special operations teams are moving into position." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The Void Swarm wanted a war, now they're going to get one. 3 months after Ambassador Vasquez's declaration, the galaxy was learning what human warfare really meant. Ambassador Zekthai stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Persistence, watching displays that showed battle formations unlike anything in his military experience. The Krillian warrior had served as a liaison officer between the Galactic Defense Forces and the human fleet. What he had seen in the past 90 days had changed his understanding of war itself. The ship around him was impressive but not extraordinary by galactic standards. Human technology was advanced but not revolutionary. Their weapons were powerful but not uniquely so. Their shields and armor were solid but not impenetrable. What made human warships terrifying was how they were used. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Void Swarm Hunter-Killer Pack estimated 12 ships." Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of the bridge. The woman who had once been introduced as a diplomatic aide now wore the uniform of Earth's Solar Navy with 5 stars on her collar. Her transformation from peaceful bureaucrat to military commander had been one of the most unsettling things Zekthai had witnessed. "Range?" Chen asked calmly. 400,000 kilometers in closing," Torres replied. In normal galactic warfare, this would be the moment for careful positioning. Ships would maneuver to optimal firing ranges. Commanders would analyze enemy formations and plan coordinated attacks. The engagement would follow predictable patterns that both sides understood. Admiral Chen had other ideas. "All ships ramming speed," she ordered. "Target their formation center." Zekthai felt his foreheart skip a beat. "Admiral," he said carefully, "surely you don't mean to actually ram them." Chen turned to look at him with the patient expression of a teacher explaining something simple to a slow student. Ambassador, what's the one thing the Void Swarm has never encountered in galactic warfare? What do you mean? Suicide attacks, Chen said matter-of-factly. Every other species treats their ships and crews as valuable resources to be preserved. Humans treat them as tools to achieve objectives. The human fleet accelerated toward the swarm formation at maximum speed. 12 human destroyers against 12 alien hunter-killers. By all tactical analysis, it should have been an even fight, with heavy casualties on both sides. Instead, it was a massacre. The swarm ships, programmed to expect conventional engagement patterns, were completely unprepared for enemies that charged straight at them with no regard for their own safety. 3 human destroyers actually did ram swarm vessels, their crews escaping in armored pods at the last second. The remaining 9 used the chaos to close to point-blank range and unleash devastating firepower. Engagement complete, reported Lieutenant Torres. All swarm vessels destroyed. We've lost 3 destroyers but recovered all crew pods. Admiral Chen nodded as if she had expected exactly this outcome. Have the damaged crews transferred to replacement ships? We have another engagement in 6 hours. Zekthai stared at the tactical display. The human commander had just sacrificed 3 starships and treated it like a minor inconvenience. How? He asked. How do you fight with such disregard for your own forces? Chen's expression softened slightly. We don't disregard them, Ambassador, but we understand something that other species seem to have forgotten. What's that? Sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to lose them. In the ship's observation lounge, Elena Vasquez met with military commanders from across the human fleet. The woman who had been a quiet diplomat was now Earth's chief strategic coordinator. Her paper notebook had been replaced by holographic displays showing battle plans that spanned entire star systems. Status report, she said as the senior officers assembled around the briefing table. General Webb, now wearing his actual military uniform instead of his logistics coordinator disguise, activated a star map. Red markers showed swarm positions. Blue markers showed human forces. Green markers showed liberated systems. The Outer Rim campaign is ahead of schedule, he reported. We've reclaimed 7 systems in the past month. Swarm forces are beginning to retreat from advanced positions. Colonel Martinez of the Marine Corps added her own data. Ground operations on Kepler 442b were successful. We eliminated 3 swarm hive nodes and rescued approximately 2 million civilians. Casualties? Elena asked. 12 Marines killed, 47 wounded. Acceptable losses for the scale of the operation. Zekthai, observing from his position as liaison officer, felt his translator struggle with the human concept of acceptable losses. In Krillian warfare, losing 50 warriors would be considered a disaster, requiring extensive mourning rituals. Elena nodded approvingly. What about the psychological warfare division? Captain Singh, a thin man with intense eyes, leaned forward, eagerly. We've had remarkable success disrupting swarm coordination. Project Feedback is showing a 30% reduction in their tactical response times. Explain Project Feedback to our guest, Elena said, gesturing toward Zekthai. Singh's smile was deeply unsettling. The Void Swarm shares information through quantum-entangled neural networks. They think as one mind across their entire species. We've learned to inject false data into their communication systems. Zekthai's forearms twitched with confusion. False data? But how does one lie to a hive mind? You don't lie to it, Singh explained patiently. You make it lie to itself. We've captured several swarm drones and learned to mimic their neural patterns. Now we can feed contradictory information into their network. General Webb pulled up a tactical display showing a recent battle. Last week, we convinced a swarm fleet that our main force was attacking from the north when we were actually coming from the south. They repositioned their entire defensive line in the wrong direction. The beauty of it, Singh continued, is that the swarm's greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness. Because they share all information instantly, false data spreads through their entire force within minutes. Elena studied the battle reports with satisfaction. Any other developments? Commander Patel of Special Operations cleared her throat. Ma'am, we've successfully completed the first live capture of a swarm hive node. The room fell silent. Even by human standards, this was an extraordinary achievement. Alive? Elena asked. Yes, ma'am. Unconscious but biologically functional. We used modified sonic weapons to disrupt its nervous system without causing permanent damage. Zekthai felt his blood turn cold. You captured a living hive node? But that's impossible. They self-destruct rather than allow capture. Commander Patel's smile was predatory. Only if they have time to activate their destruction sequences. We've learned to move faster than their reaction times. What do you plan to do with it? Zekthai asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Elena's expression was calm and professional, but her eyes held depths that the Krillian warrior found disturbing. We're going to ask it questions. You cannot interrogate a hive mind. They share no individual consciousness. Torture would be meaningless. Who said anything about torture? Elena replied. We're going to have a conversation. She activated another display showing a laboratory deep in the ship's secure sections. The captured swarm node was suspended in some kind of energy field, its massive form twitching occasionally as human scientists worked around it. Dr. Kim has developed a method of interfacing directly with swarm neural networks, Elena explained. We can communicate with it on its own level. Zekthai watched, in fascination and horror as human technicians connected cables and sensors to the alien creature. What do you hope to learn? Everything, Elena said simply. Their command structure, their strategic plans, their weaknesses, where they come from, and how they reproduce. General Webb leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of a predator that had cornered its prey. The swarm's mistake was assuming that sharing information made them stronger. They never considered what would happen if someone learned to share information back. On the main display, data began flowing from the captured hive node. Tactical information, fleet positions, strategic objectives. The swarm's own intelligence was being turned against them. My God, Zekthai whispered, you're reading their minds. Elena nodded calmly. The void swarm thinks as one. That makes them predictable, and predictable enemies are dead enemies. She stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the stars where battles were raging across dozens of systems. They wanted to consume the galaxy. They thought they could digest us like they had everyone else. Her reflection in the transparent metal showed the same predatory smile that had terrified the Galactic Council months earlier. They forgot that some prey bites back. 6 months after humanity had entered the war, Ambassador Zekthai stood in the same observation deck where he had first met General Webb. The view outside was different now. Instead of emergency defensive positions, he could see construction crews rebuilding damaged stations. Supply ships moved freely between systems that had been under swarm control just weeks before. The war was over. The final battle had not been the massive fleet engagement that most military theorists had predicted. Instead, it had been something much more disturbing. Humans had used the intelligence gathered from captured swarm nodes to locate the species' central command nexus. Then they had done something that no other species had ever attempted. They had talked to the void swarm, not negotiated or bargained, but actually communicated with a hive mind that had never experienced individual thought. Using modified quantum communication arrays, human technicians had injected concepts directly into the swarm's collective consciousness. Ideas like doubt, confusion, the possibility of being wrong. For a species that had existed for millions of years as a single unified mind, the introduction of uncertainty was like a virus. The swarm began to question its own decisions. Different nodes started to disagree with each other. The perfect unity that had made them unstoppable began to crack. Within days, the entire Void Swarm collective had fragmented into thousands of smaller groups, each following different objectives. Some continued attacking. Others retreated. A few simply stopped moving entirely, paralyzed by their newfound ability to doubt themselves. It had been the most elegant military victory in galactic history, Humanity had not just defeated the swarm, they had taught it to defeat itself. Elena Vasquez found Zekthai on the observation deck as the fleet prepared to return to Earth. She wore her simple diplomatic uniform again, but the Krillian warrior could never again see her as the harmless bureaucrat she had once appeared to be. Contemplating the view? She asked pleasantly. Zekthai turned to face her. Contemplating the future, he replied. The Galactic Council is preparing to restructure our entire defense doctrine based on what we've learned from human tactics. Elena nodded. That's probably wise, though I hope you'll remember that warfare should always be a last resort. Should it? Zekthai asked. Your species seems remarkably good at it. Elena was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. We're good at many things, Ambassador. Cooking, music, poetry, gardening. We prefer those activities to war. But you're better at war than anyone else in the galaxy. Yes, she said simply. We are. Zekthai studied the human woman's profile. I need to understand something. For 50 years, your people were peaceful members of our society. You mediated disputes, shared knowledge, helped build a better galaxy. Was that all pretense? Elena turned to meet his gaze. Not pretense. Hope. Hope? We hoped that the galaxy would never need to see what we're truly capable of. We hoped that reason and diplomacy would be enough to solve any crisis that arose. She gestured toward the window, where the last of the human war fleet was forming up for the journey home. We hoped we were wrong about the nature of the universe, that maybe, just maybe, there was a place where intelligence beings could exist without having to fight for survival. And now, Elena's smile was sad. Now we know better. The universe is still the same dangerous place it always was. The strong still prey on the weak. Peace still requires the capacity for violence. Zekthai felt a chill run through his nervous system. Are you saying humanity will become a conquering species? No, Elena said firmly. We'll become protectors. There's a difference. I'm not sure I understand the distinction. Elena was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. Conquerors take territory for their own benefit. Protectors secure territory to keep it safe for others. She pointed to a distant star system that had been one of the first targets of the Void Swarm. Kepler 438 had a population of 3 billion beings before the swarm arrived. After human forces liberated it, how many humans remained behind? Zekthai accessed his data files. According to my records, there are currently 47,000 humans in the Kepler 438 system. And what are they doing there? Engineering crews rebuilding infrastructure, medical teams treating survivors, agricultural specialists helping restore food production. Zekthai paused as the significance sank in. No permanent military installations, no colonial governors, no territorial claims. Exactly, Elena said. We saved Kepler 438 because it needed saving, not because we wanted to own it. On the main communication display, Chancellor Velmora's crystalline form appeared. The ancient being looked different now. Her inner light seemed brighter, more confident. Ambassador Vasquez, she said formally, the Galactic Council wishes to express our eternal gratitude for humanity's intervention in the swarm crisis. Our gratitude is appreciated but unnecessary, Chancellor, Elena replied. We were protecting our home as much as yours. Nevertheless, the Council has voted unanimously to offer Earth a permanent seat on the High Security Committee. Your strategic capabilities would be invaluable in preventing future threats. Elena exchanged glances with Zekthai before responding. We appreciate the offer, Chancellor, but Earth prefers to maintain our current role as general members of the Council. Velmora's light pulsed with surprise. You refuse a position of greater authority? We don't refuse it, Elena said carefully. We prefer not to make decisions for other species. We'll offer advice when asked and assistance when needed, but each world should govern itself. After the communication ended, Zekthai stared at Elena with undisguised confusion. You could rule the galaxy now. After what you've demonstrated, no species would dare oppose you. Elena's laugh was genuine and warm. Rule the galaxy? Ambassador, we have trouble managing one planet. Can you imagine trying to govern 847 different species across thousands of worlds? But the power is a tool, Elena said. Like any tool, its value depends on how you use it. We've used our military power to protect the galaxy. Now we'll use our diplomatic power to help rebuild it. She gestured toward Earth, visible as a small blue dot among the stars. Humans learned a long time ago that being able to destroy something doesn't mean you should. We became the dominant species on our world not by killing everything else but by learning to live alongside it. Zekthai considered this. Yet you eliminated entire ecosystems. Drove species to extinction. Yes, Elena admitted sadly. We made mistakes, terrible ones. But we learned from them. That's what intelligence is for, learning from your mistakes so you don't repeat them. She turned away from the window and began walking toward the transport bay where shuttles were waiting to take the diplomatic corps back to their respective homeworlds. The galaxy is safe now, she said. The void swarm is no longer a threat. Trade routes are reopening. Refugees are returning to their homes. That's what we fought for. Zekthai fell into step beside her. And what happens the next time a crisis arises? Will humanity intervene again? Elena paused at the transport bay entrance. If necessary, but we hope it won't be necessary. Hope again? Always hope, she said firmly. Hope that the galaxy will learn to protect itself. Hope that reason will triumph over violence. Hope that next time diplomacy will be enough. She smiled, and for the first time since the war began, Zekthai saw the gentle diplomat he had first met at the council chambers. But if hope fails, if diplomacy doesn't work, if another threat emerges that the galaxy can't handle on its own, her expression hardened just slightly. Well, humans are very good at adapting to new situations. As Zekthai's shuttle departed for the journey home, he composed his final report to the Galactic Council. It was perhaps the most important document in the organization's 3,000-year history. The human species represents a fundamental paradigm shift in galactic civilization, he wrote. They are simultaneously the most peaceful and most dangerous beings we have encountered. Their capacity for both creation and destruction exceeds anything in our previous experience. He paused, looking out at the human ships preparing for their own journey home. Recommendation: under no circumstances should any member species consider humans as enemies. Not because they are too noble to fight, but because they are too effective to defeat. The Void Swarm learned this lesson too late. He deleted the last sentence and wrote instead, "Humanity chose to be our protectors rather than our conquerors. We should be grateful for that choice and do nothing to make them reconsider it." In the final line of his report, Zekthai added, "A personal note that would be quoted in history books for generations. The humans didn't join our war, we joined theirs, and we should be grateful they let us."